Okay, so I'm going to be presenting our next host. She's connecting from London, and her name is Jenni Parker. Is Jenni coming in?
Hi, Valentina. Nice to be here.
Oh, so nice to see you. I've calculated.
too.
We haven't seen each other, what, in 10 years, I think, now.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a ridiculous amount of time. I can't believe it's been so long.
A really long time. In fact, this 24-hour conversation that we have, this is our second edition, gives us the opportunity actually to link up to people that maybe, we don't have always chances to work with, or, that we've been connected, and it's really nice to reconnect to discuss about design.
It is. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so I'll just introduce you a second to the people that are listening. So Jenni Parker, she is the founder and director of Humanly, which is a design studio based in London, and it's mainly specialized in human-centered design and on social impact mainly. So our conversation today is going to be on a bit about Jenni, about maybe it would be nice to talk about how you came to develop your design studio. I met Jenni 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, because you finished your master degree in Politecnico 10 years ago. And then afterwards, she has worked for UN. She has done many projects in social design. And then finally, she has opened this really interesting design studio, which I've been observing from afar. And I'm really curious to hear more about it. So maybe, Jenni, if we can start by just giving an idea of how you made it, basically, and where it comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, we can go back to my time at Politecnico. I really enjoyed studying product service system design. And I guess my academic experience led me to really develop a multidisciplinary approach to design. I was always interested in exploring how design could be used to achieve positive social impact. And during my time at Politecnico, I was able to do that through my master thesis and an internship that I did with the UN agency in Italy, the International Labour Organization. So I explored the use of mobile phones in developing contexts and the different services and systems that were forming around mobile phones to augment them as a communication device and provide other services such as health services, financial services, education, and so on. So that led to me getting my first job after I graduated with UNHCR, which was the refugee agency of the UN based in Budapest. So I was there for 6 months, working in-house in the technology team, looking at how mobile phones could be used as part of training staff working in different places where they might have limited connectivity. And then after that, I became a freelance design consultant. I worked with many different clients, both in the international development and humanitarian space, and then moving more into focusing on social impact within the UK, within the health and social care system here, and around other topics in the UK. After a few years of doing so, I decided to start my own studio and grow teams. So it was quite natural the way that it evolved. Started bringing other people in. Now we're a team of 5 at Humanly, and it's been about 4.5 years since I started the studio. So it was a natural evolution for me, based on freelance work and then forming a team. But I think having a team has really enabled me and the team to take on bigger projects, tackle problems at a more systemic level. So it's been really rewarding.
Yeah, it's quite difficult now to focus on social impact and at the same time have the machine working, economically. And how do you manage that? How do you see that now? And have things changed? I don't know, in these past years.
Right. I mean, it can be, definitely. I think the fact that design approaches and human-centered approaches have gained a lot of traction within the public sector and the charity sector, particularly here in the UK, but also internationally, in kind of international development projects. There has been a lot of interest in human-centered design and really understanding problems before jumping to solutions. So I think that has helped create a market for organizations like us to help organizations who might be less familiar with these approaches to utilize them as part of their projects and make sure that they are designing the right thing and really meeting people's needs. So I think a bit of momentum has built up, which has been really great. And we are quite lucky within the UK as well that, you know, we have organisations like the Government Digital Service, GDS, that have really paved the way for the use of service design and human-centred design approaches within government. We also have a thriving charity sector, and charities within the UK are using these approaches more and more as well. So we have been very fortunate always to have clients, always have exciting projects to be working on. Although obviously within the social impact space, funding can be a real challenge, and sometimes there is funding for a project and then funding can be lost and projects can stall or kind of not get off the ground. So that is a long-term challenge of the social innovation space. But ultimately, I believe everything we do still has an impact in changing mindsets and ways of working.
And yeah, just to give still maybe to me as well, I'm curious to know, and to the people that are listening, what have been, just give us a glimpse of which are the projects, which are the more than the projects, the context in which you have worked in these past years, and then probably afterwards we'll move on to our last projects, right, that we also talked about, and see what the future will be. Yeah.
Absolutely. We've worked on a lot of different topics, which is something I've always found really interesting. And I believe we learn something from every project and every issue that we take forward into other projects, because with a lot of complex social issues, things are very interconnected. We've worked on a lot of health projects, yet health as a theme comes up in many other projects as well. For example, we're doing a project around unemployment. So it's quite hard to separate some of these things out. And I think working on different issues is really beneficial. We did a large project with a charity in the UK looking at support for people living with cancer. So we spent 14 months involving people in a co-creation process. We worked with over 200 people, including people living with cancer, people who provide support to people living with cancer, and other stakeholders coming up with ideas. And then we did 6 months of prototyping different concepts. That led to the implementation of one of the services we designed, which is a coaching service for people living with cancer, that helps them identify goals they want to work towards and support them towards those goals. So that was quite exciting for us, as you know, we don't believe that type of support has really been done before. We did find one example on a small scale of it being done in the UK really successfully, but it was taking a different approach to something like counselling and kind of really helping people look forward and work towards where they want to be. And that has now been delivered, which is really exciting. And we've worked last year with another organisation here in London around that works on health issues. And we looked at how people feed their babies and infants in low-income households. So that was working with parents of very young children, really understanding what their day-to-day lives are like, how they access food on a limited budget, and what the conditions are around breastfeeding and feeding their babies and things like that, which was also really insightful. And then more recently, we've been looking at unemployment, we've been looking at family planning in Pakistan, innovation in the adult social care space in the UK. So it's been very broad.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, social issues can be very broad. It's quite difficult, however, to be an expert in each one of these fields. How do you manage that? Like, I'm sure, you know, you've been moving from health to inclusion to, you know, we talked about also marginalized communities, and yeah, we were talking about children. And so how do you manage, you know, not being expert? How does a designer manage that? Not being expert in a certain field?
That's a really good question. Well, we always involve subject matter experts in all our projects. So it's really important to us that we connect with experts, whether it's within the delivery organizations that we're working with or academic experts, and really try to utilize their knowledge and expertise as well and bring that into the project. So that's one way, definitely. Another way is just by building a multidisciplinary team and recognizing that it's really valuable for us to bring different skills and knowledge into our team and not have a homogenous team with the same background and same expertise. And so that's really useful. One of our team members used to work, specialized in working with people with learning disabilities. So we've worked on that issue for a few projects, and she has real in-depth knowledge around that. So sometimes we have subject matter expertise within the team. We also have associates that we bring in on the project around infant feeding. We had an external expert within our network who's worked on that topic many times. So we always try to bring in different skills, different knowledge, and work in a really multidisciplinary way, as well as recognizing that people are experts in their own experience, and working with people with lived experience playing a huge role in all the projects that we do.
But in the core team, are you all designers, or do you come from different
different backgrounds? Yeah, a couple of us studied design and had quite a linear journey, I suppose. In our team, we have an anthropologist. I love working with anthropologists, as you can imagine. I think that's a really valuable skill set in this kind of ethnographic approach. And then there's my colleague who I mentioned, who has a background in art and education and working with people with learning disabilities. So we really like to. We like that when we're building the team, that people can bring different experiences and different knowledge.
Yeah, I'll stay on this topic. I mean, we didn't talk about it, but I'm curious to know, since we talked about methods and we want to talk about methods afterwards, also connected to digital tools and COVID, we'll do that afterwards. So just to talk about methods, how, with respect to this, multidisciplinary team, which is obviously, what we always talk about in theory. Oh, you have to work in a multidisciplinary team and you have to, engage with people from other disciplines. But then there's also sometimes a conflict between methods that are used. My question, I would say, is in two directions. One is, how do design methods, confront with other methodologies? And if instead you have integrated, let's say in your process, some new methods that you have discovered by working with people coming from other areas.
Yeah, I mean, I think there can be a difference of approaches, a difference on, what the solutions might be, because people have different preconceptions based on their experience. I personally find that quite healthy, because, different perspectives and diversity of experience enhances any design process and the development of any solution. So I think whilst it can take some time to work through that and really make sure everyone's perspective is integrated, I think it's a valuable process, even if it can be challenging at times. From our side, I think it's about recognizing that we don't always have all the answers. Just because we've done our research, there's always going to be a limit to what we can learn within the lifespan of a project. And if we're working on an issue that, we're working with people who've worked on that issue for decades, we really value their input and experience as well, whilst, upskilling them in design approaches and the value that we can bring as outsiders, because sometimes that's not obvious. Why would this team of people who've never worked on this issue have anything to bring to this conversation, and how could they possibly come up with a solution? I completely understand why that's what people might think when they first work with us. But it's all about building relationships, talking them through case studies of how we've worked in the past, and really building their input into the process as well. And I believe there was a second part to this question, but I've now forgotten.
What you learned from other, like what you brought in, not only what design can bring, and this allowing people to enter our process, but also if there's some specific skills that you have, apart from you studying design, but in all these years, are there some specific skills that you've learned that you would add on to design what you've learned before?
Definitely. I would just give one example. I think a couple of the people on my team are more well versed in kind of academic research. You know, one of our team members has a PhD as well. And I think I've always leaned more towards first-hand research, observation. I get all my ideas and inspiration
practice-based.
Practice-based, whereas I've grown a deep appreciation for really thorough desk research and actually looking at what exists and what papers have been written, what's what evidence there is, what's been tried before and what were the outcomes. And I think actually it is really important in a robust design process to be doing that and making sure you're not trying something that's been tried several times before and hasn't worked, and kind of assuming that, every idea you have might be new. And, some projects, even one of the projects we're doing now, we're actually looking at some initiatives that were trialed in the 1980s in the UK, and actually going as far back as that to see, well, what has been done, what can we learn from it, and how does that impact what we want to test now.
Yeah, and what about just the last question on these general more issues on your work that I'm curious about is about, you told me that you've been working not only in the UK, but you've also been working in other areas of the world, but also working in UK itself. I mean, you certainly, if you're working with marginalized communities, or, you have some kind of cultural, I think, differences and issues. In that case, how do you relate with that? Do you have like a cultural mediator? Do you have someone that allows you to understand better?
I think depending on the projects, we'll try to create a team that reflects the people that we're working with ideally. And if we're unable to do that, we might not take on the project and recommend that the client work with another partner who can have a better fit and build a better rapport with that cohort of people that they're trying to reach. In the projects in which we believe we can tackle the problem credibly, we will try to, co-run workshops with people from communities, for example, is one approach that we have used successfully in the past. Or depending on who the users are, we'll have to find other creative approaches. We've worked with people with learning disabilities, complex communication needs, people with non-verbal communication, people living with dementia, and always finding new ways of really meaningfully engaging people and making sure it's a rewarding experience for them, and that we're really kind of hearing their voice and their contribution to the project in an authentic way.
Yeah, exactly. And this last point that you mentioned takes us on to, let's say, maybe going a bit more, diving into maybe your last two projects and reflecting on a specific element that you spoke to me about, which was, this digital divide, the exclusion of people because of the use of digital technology, especially in the COVID period. So we've all moved on to digital, but you've also worked in Pakistan, and you worked on another project in UK that you told me about. And maybe, just tell us how you managed, what were the other methods that you could use in these cases, and to which extent, to what extent digital devices can work and where they can't work, or.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that we've come across. Well, we've always come across it in our work, really, but it's been even more apparent in the past year. So the beginning of the pandemic, we were utilizing approaches like using mobile phones to enable people to keep digital diaries, to take photos and videos and share them with us as a really good way of replicating the observation that we would normally do, which worked for the participants in that particular project. Then we've moved on to a project looking at unemployment and ways to support people over the age of 50 who are out of work and looking to get into employment. That's been really interesting because we've done the whole project remotely, and some of the people that we've involved have been digitally excluded. So we haven't been able to invite them to workshops on Zoom and get people using digital whiteboards to come up with ideas on Mural or Miro and these sorts of tools that have been really effective in stakeholder workshops and things like that. So we had to develop new methodologies and new ways of involving people. What we've done in a lot of cases is shift away from group work to working with individuals in that project. So we developed a creative kit of different activities, self-reflection activities to get people to reflect on their life journeys and how work and education played a part in their journey. And then looking forward, you know, imagining what would their ideal job look like, what does their ideal life look like over the age of 50 into retirement. And giving them some time to complete those activities at home. We posted them to people and asked them to send them back to us, also via the post. So using really old school methods to engage people. And then we phoned them to discuss their answers, go in more depth into their experiences and ideas. But, you know, back to basics, telephone interviews rather than using Zoom or Microsoft Teams. That's been really successful. And I think we've learned there is a lot of value in working with people one-to-one and not just in group discussions and group idea generation workshops, and also the benefit of people having a little bit more time to reflect and really think about what they have to offer in terms of experiences and ideas, and not being on the spot like they might be in a face-to-face context. So that's been really valuable, and we've learned a lot. And I think we'll utilize a lot of those methods going forward, regardless of restrictions. In terms of our work in Pakistan, that's been very different and also really interesting. So in this project, we're working with several different organizations, looking at increasing uptake of modern family planning in Pakistan. So largely looking at contraception and increasing access, and how we could improve those services for people who wish to use them. In that project, most of the team is in Pakistan, so we're kind of involved as international experts in human-centered design, but our role in the project has been to train researchers in Pakistan in design research and human-centered design methodologies, which has been really interesting. So we never intended to do any field work ourselves. It's really important to us that those activities are done by local people in country. And especially such a taboo topic in Pakistan, that was even more important. But we were planning to go there and train the team ourselves and really get to know them and work with them collaboratively at various points in the process. Nonetheless, we did get to go there initially before the pandemic to do some research planning, and then we developed a really creative research approach for them using, I mean, all the methods were offline anyway due to the target audience, but we developed video tutorials to help them understand how to conduct the methods. So we had people do creative methods like card sorting, also used journey mapping and things like this. And we had a lot of nicely designed materials that we provided them with, along with video tutorials of how to run sessions with people, how to capture the results, and then answered all those questions. And then we co-analysed the results. So they were able to do that field work in September, October, in between COVID waves. They managed to get out and do the field work, and then that led on to the analysis. And now we're hopefully going to be moving into prototyping. But I think that's been really valuable, and it's taught us how easy it is, I guess, to collaborate remotely, even across cultures and borders, if the will is there and everyone's. We've got a really, really good relationship with them, in which, you know, they know they can challenge us. And although we're supposedly experts, you know, they're experts in many other aspects, and they're quite happy to challenge us on approaches and tell us, well, that won't work in Pakistan, and well, we can't do that with participants, we'll have to change it. So we've got a really good kind of teamwork going on, and they're very excited to try new approaches and learn different ways of doing things. So we've managed to upskill them quite a lot.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot of work, and I have so many questions I wrote down. I'll first interact with the idea of using the post. We also used the post this year for our PSSD course in the Innovation Studio, and we actually we wanted students to do a prototype, a physical prototype. So we decided to use a paper from a company, and the company sent it to our university, and then we had to distribute it to 100 students all around the world. And yesterday I just received back 4 of them because, you know, it didn't go through customs. the paper. It was just a piece of paper. So we also tried to use, any kind of, from low tech to high tech. And also the one-to-one, I totally agree that sometimes in group sessions, you lose in-depth knowledge of the single person. And sometimes that in-depth knowledge allows you to go, as the word says, deeper into certain issues, and to instead of brainstorming group sessions with a lot of people, lots of post-its, and it's somehow a bit more superficial, let's say, as a process. So the combination of the two, obviously, I think it's that's really interesting. So using low-tech telephone calls, but also digital boards, digital diaries, I find it extremely interesting. I was wondering if you were thinking of creating a kit that you share with others, or was that not in your program?
And we definitely want to share as much as we can about what we're doing. We did co-write a paper on remote user engagement with the Centre for Aging Better, which is available online. And in that, we shared some of the learnings, some of the different methods we've tried. There's a couple of mini case studies in there around some of the projects that I mentioned, and some takeaways and what we'll take forward in the future and what we've learned from the pandemic. So if people want to check that out, they'll find it online. But we would like to blog more, share more. The issue is just finding time. We have submitted a couple of talks to upcoming conferences and events to try and share more about the work that we're doing, the different methods we've developed, what's worked, what has failed spectacularly, and what's been successful, and what we've iterated on and improved. So yeah, hopefully sharing it a bit via events and our blog in the coming months.
Yeah. Maybe also in class in September, I'll ask you to come and share. That would be nice to have.
Absolutely, that would be great.
A closer view and, maybe in depth and understanding better how these methods were developed and circumstances. Here, we're not sharing images, we're not sharing, exactly, examples, but that's the format. And so it's a conversation, and that's what it's the aim of this is. So just to understand. So what do you think? I mean, really, you've been exploring, I think, social issues and how design can work in this area. I think I would have a few, because we have less than 5 minutes. So I would have a few more questions. I'm wondering if you have something that maybe I didn't ask that you think is important to say with respect to the future, or how you see the future of this.
Absolutely. I think over the past year with the Black Lives Matter movement, it's been really good in that it's really galvanized a conversation about systems of oppression and how we really understand those at a fundamental level and a systemic level. And I find that really inspiring and exciting at the moment, that kind of elevation of the conversation, and how we incorporate that into our work going forward. And I definitely don't have all the answers around this, but I think this is where I'm also on my own learning journey and really questioning things and questioning our role in projects and what we're doing and how we can really tackle some of those more systemic issues that are being surfaced.
Do you have a dream project, something that you would really like to do and hasn't come yet?
There's lots of things I'd like to do. I guess one area that I've never worked on that I would love to work on is around LGBTQ issues. Being a part of the LGBTQ community myself is something I'm really passionate about. I have done some volunteering on a helpline here in the UK, which I've enjoyed, but I've never worked on that topic professionally. So that would be particularly exciting. But I'm excited by all social impact projects. Really, they're all interesting and a great opportunity to learn.
How do you measure your social impact? This is a difficult question, Jenni. We're trying to understand it still in some projects, but how do we actually measure it? I mean, it's obviously, I mean, we've come to the conclusion that it is a qualitative narrative way of measuring. But have you been asked for these projects to actually express your impact in numbers or in other ways?
Yes, absolutely. And we do have an evaluation partner, which is another organization who we've worked with on a few projects, and they really understand our methodology. So I think bringing in impact and evaluation experts who are familiar with the human-centered design process is really valuable. And there's a lot happening in that space. We use theory of change and other models that we don't have time to go into now. But if anyone's interested, I think that's an area to look at.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a very important area, and it's a very important area that all designers should be aware of in order also to show their impact in this sector.
Yeah, it's so important. Otherwise, why are we doing it?
Exactly. I mean, for us, it's maybe obvious, but then you have to give evidence, right? So, okay, Jenni, it was really nice seeing you again, and we'll keep in contact. And
yeah,
so,
thanks for having me.
Thank you.